Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky promises a counteroffensive is imminent, assuring world leaders and his fellow Ukrainians that they will liberate areas occupied by Russia. The promise comes after a several-city European trip to shore up support and new military aid from leaders in Italy, France, Germany, and the UK.
We're real partners. This support, it will help us to be more strong.
After months of heavy fighting, Ukraine's military have started to push Russian troops out of the eastern city of Bakhmut, a setback the Kremlin has acknowledged. And Ukraine's upcoming counteroffensive is expected to include areas in the Crimean Peninsula and parts of eastern Ukraine that were under Russian control before their February 2022 invasion. Now, Ukraine's President Zelensky says victory is closer than ever. But, to put it mildly, Russian President Vladimir Putin is not known for fighting fair, or losing with grace, prompting fears of yet more human rights abuses, including the use of chemical weapons. To discuss, I'm joined by retired Army Brigadier General Kevin Ryan, a former defense attaché to Russia, now a senior fellow at the Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs at the Harvard Kennedy School, and Carol Savitz, a senior advisor for MIT's Security Studies program and research associate at Harvard's Davis Center for Russian and Eurasian Studies and the Harvard Ukrainian Research Institute. Carol, why don't you get started?
Sure.
When should we expect this Ukrainian counteroffensive?
Well, that's been the big question for the last several weeks at least. Zelensky seems to be stalling. Last week he made a statement that said that when they're ready, they will do it. They're waiting for more arms and ammunition from the West. And then he said something today apparently about the weather, so I gather it's still a little muddy in Ukraine, so I think it's coming. But he did, since you mentioned Bakhmut, he did say that they are continuing the fight in Bakhmut to prevent Russian soldiers from redeploying to the other areas where they do intend to direct the offensive.
Kevin, when this happens, what's it going to look like?
Well, there's a number of ways that the Ukrainians could mount a counteroffensive. They could do it in Bakhmut region or the Donetsk province if they wanted to fight back there. I think there is a logic that says that they will rather work in the south where there has been fighting continuing on now, but if they can disrupt or create a break in this land corridor along the Azov Sea, which unites mainland Russia with Crimea. If they can break that with an operation in the south, that will do a number of things strategically for them, and it would be a great victory for them. A partial victory in their eyes, because total victory for them is getting rid of all Russian troops.
So if this counteroffensive, even if it succeeds, what is the Ukrainian theory of victory, given this disparity in forces? Is there expectation that the Russian army will collapse or something else?
Well, if you're asking me, the Ukrainian theory of victory has been repeated often by the president and the senior military leaders, so I think we have to take them at their word. Their theory of victory is something which is very, in most people's opinions, is almost unattainable, and that is a complete push out of Russian troops from all the former Ukrainian territory. In other words, Ukraine as it was back in 2013, in charge of Crimea, in charge of Donetsk and Lugansk, and so on.
Carol,
this is a big theory.
I think a more likely scenario, if at all feasible, would be a pushback to the 2014 lines that Kevin just referred to. I think that that's more realistic, if indeed it's realistic at all. You said something in your lead-in about Crimea. I see them, what they're doing now is, bombing oil depots and attacking, trying to prevent the Russians from staging in Crimea and countering the southern offensive. I don't know that they can retake Crimea either, as much as they would like to.
So almost every estimate for the beginning of the war vastly underestimated the Ukrainians and overestimated the Russian performance.
Right.
I think that's sort of been our consistent theme of the first year of the war. But the casualties have been astonishing. If we could put up on the screen, as of March 2023, Ukraine has suffered somewhere between 124,000 and 131,000 casualties. Russia, as many as 223,000. Just to put that in comparison, the number of soldiers each side had before the invasion, Ukraine had just under 200,000 and Russia had around 900,000. these are significant fractions of the total military establishment of the country. I mean, as a fraction of their armies, it's much a larger fraction than anything the United States has suffered in any conflict in its entire history.
Right.
What does that tell us about the ability of the two sides to keep fighting at this level of intensity for for months or years going forward?
I think that's a great question, and I don't think we really know the answer. As Zelensky said, I think in Britain today, we're much more motivated than the Russians are to keep fighting, so I think that they have the ability to sustain some of these casualties for longer. The Russians are talking about a second mobilization, which the first one didn't go so well, but a second mobilization, and they seem more poorly prepared to counter the suspected, long-awaited Ukrainian offensive, although they have dug in lines. There have been pictures in the media of especially lines in Crimea and trenches, and it's beginning to look much more like World War I than anything else we've ever seen.
Including artillery expenditures, which has looked something like out of World War I as well. So Kevin, given what we've seen so far, do you expect the Russians to have the military capacity to be able to defend against a Ukrainian thrust?
Well, I think the short answer is yes, they can defend, but maybe not successfully along all the front line. You've put your finger on the major learning lesson for the United States and the rest of the world, and that is that this is the first major power war for the 21st century, and the high intensity of this war is a lesson for all of us. Nobody is ready for these kinds of losses, much less Ukraine. But even the United States would not be fully prepared for this. I think that we'll continue to have this kind of a stalemate situation where it's a stalemate in effect, but with small movement on either side of the line over time. And this is maybe the most probable or plausible situation moving forward.
I completely agree that this is really a war of attrition at this point. If you look at what's been happening in Bakhmut, it's block by block, corner by corner. The Russians are still holding the center of the town, whereas the Ukrainians are making advances along the edges. I don't see any major breakthroughs. I don't see another Kharkiv offensive the way we had last fall either. I think that the Russians are better prepared to wage a defensive war, and the Ukrainians are lacking in the ammunition and maybe even in the manpower, as you alluded to continue a major offensive forward.
So if the Ukrainian offensive is successful, I think the great fear for everyone else is that this will lead to Russian escalation even further, right? And there's been constant allusions to nuclear weapons by the Russian government, by figures in the Russian media at a level that is sort of, I'd say, not normal.
Right.
And then the possibility that's been raised recently of chemical weapons. Is that a realistic possibility? And if it is, what can we do to forestall it?
I don't know what we can do to forestall it. You know, Kevin knows even better than I. The Russian nuclear doctrine says escalate to de-escalate, and when there's an existential threat. But it's not clear in the doctrine whether it's an existential threat to Putin himself or to Russia, even if it's a conventional assault on Moscow. So that's why Putin has been threatening the nuclear weapons. But my hunch is that a lot of it is bluff. I mean, why move tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus? They could just as easily use Kaliningrad or Belgorod or some of the areas along the border. An interesting side note, Lukashenko's apparently been ill and has not been seen in over a week. So that's another factor to consider in here. I think that, you know, short of using nuclear weapons, as you allude to, he could either use chemical or biological weapons. The danger there is, of course, that would also affect the Russian troops on the ground and not just the Ukrainian forces. I think we have to be wary of that. And I actually think the Biden administration has done a very good job of actually not providing certain kinds of weapons that the Ukrainians have been looking for fear of that next step in the escalatory staircase.
So, Kevin, or how would we, if in the case of, let's say, a use of chemical weapons by the Russians, what would an American response look like?
Well, let me stay on the more, I think, on the track that Carol had us on, which is that you know, I think she's right that in general, you could say that the use of a nuclear weapon, a weapon of mass destruction, I'm going to put aside chemical weapons for the very reason that Carol mentioned a second ago, that would be much more dangerous even to the Russian troops. But a nuclear weapon would be a game changer for this war, but it would also be something that the Russians could control if you can control a nuclear weapon. The problem is here that if Ukraine escalates the war, and Putin wants to escalate from his side, and he cannot do that conventionally, then he has to turn to nuclear weapons. I think that the odds of a nuclear weapon are greater today than they were when this war started. And I personally believe that the odds are greater than 50% if this Ukrainian counteroffensive has any success really at all and threatens the land corridor or Russian holdings in Donetsk, much less Crimea. So I think the nuclear weapon is a major issue for us now. What we do is we begin to prepare to operate in a world where the nuclear genie is out of the bottle.
Carol, do you agree with that assessment?
I think I'm not as pessimistic as Kevin is about the use of nuclear weapons. I still think that there'd be a lot of pushback. Look, Xi Jinping, we know, has said to Putin, do not, under any circumstances, use nuclear weapons. So I think Putin has to weigh the quasi-alliance with China with his desire to use tactical nuclear weapons in the field in Ukraine. And for the moment, I think he's going to pick the Chinese side and hope that China continues to back him as opposed to using nuclear weapons, because then they really become a rogue pariah state.
Do you, I guess what I'd say is, if that's his concern, do you think he's more concerned about the consequences for regime survival of his losing the war, or becoming even more of a pariah state than they already are?
That's a great question. I think that I don't think he cares as much about being the pariah state as he would about losing power. I think then the question that we have to talk about is how dangerous is a Russia without Putin, and what happens internally within Russia. My fear is that the next person who succeeds Putin, however he leaves the scene, could be just as aggressive, if not more nationalistic or chauvinistic than is Vladimir Putin. Putin still seems to have some kind of rational balance in there. I'm not sure about the next guy.
So with that as a concern, are there steps that we should be taking that we haven't to try and control these risks and minimize the odds of first use of nuclear weapons by the Russians?
Yes, there are steps we can take. I mean, we are communicating with Russia. We are telling them that they should not use nuclear weapons. Secretary Blinken and the president have made that clear. They've told us, without telling us the specifics, they've told us that they've warned Russia about that. But I think that it may not have an effect on Russia if Putin thinks his regime is in crisis or in a survival mode. So there's not really much we can do at this point to prevent Russia from using a nuclear weapon. So we ought to be thinking about what do we do in the case the day after, if you will. And some of that thinking should be about how our relationship is going to change with Russia then, that many of the things that we're bound by now, treaties and agreements and protocols from the past, will be gone. And so maybe we want to have a regime change in Russia then. Maybe we want to support Ukraine to the level that it will allow defeat of the Russian army. Those are the kinds of things that should be on the table for us.
Well, on that sobering note, Carol, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks.
Thank you, Guantanamo.